Hello everybody, my name is Jeffrey Martin. I'm a public librarian, but this isn't part of any job assignment. This is a continuation that I've been doing on for upper elementary kids of My Fangtastically Evil Vampire Pet by Mo O'Hara. We're nearing the end of this book. We're on chapters 27 and 28 for today. So I'm going to read those, and I hope you enjoy them. "Get down, Fang," I whispered. "I'll do this. I don't want you to get hurt." I scooped her up and whispered to her, "So just in case the bear wins, which you totally won't, but just in case, thanks, Fang, for saving me from the snake. You totally had my back, and my front, really, and now I gotta do the same for you." Then I took another small step forward and turned to Geeky Girl. "On 3, throw me the goggles, okay?" She nodded. 1 evil genius, 2 evil genius, and 3. I shouted as I tossed Fang to Geeky Girl just as she tossed the goggles. "Row!" Fang shrieked as she flew through the air. The bear reared up and growled. I grabbed the goggles and ran. "Arr!" "He has totally lost it," Sanj said, covering his eyes. I ran toward the bear with the goggles in my hand, not really knowing what I was going to do with them. And then, just above the bear, another evil light bulb appeared, and I suddenly knew what I had to do. I had an evil plan. I kept on running right past the bear, and just to make sure the bear noticed me, I growled at him as I passed. I really hoped what Dustin said before was true, because I know I needed that bear to run and to run after me. "Mark, no!" Geeky Girl shouted after me, but I didn't stop. I could hear a loud growl answering mine, and then big heavy stomps headed behind me. The bear was on my trail. I could hear Geeky Girl shouting, "Come on, we have to help," and running, and then Sanj saying, "Well, I have to see what happens." I kept on running, dodging past trees and leaping roots on the ground. I was slowing up, but it wasn't much farther. I could smell hot bear breath on my neck now. I hope you have never smelled hot bear breath, because it's more evil than anything on this camp. Black. The growling was in my ear as I jumped over the pile of branches and the leaves on the forest floor. "I hope this is the right place," I called as the bear followed me. And then I heard a crash of leaves and twigs and a thud of a bear hitting the ground. We had hit Bob and Diablo's practice snake pit. I didn't hear any hissing, so either the snake was in the real trap back at the camp by now, or it was unlucky and was now snake pancake underneath the bear. I turned and looked. The bear seemed stunned, but it was getting up. I had only a second before it would climb out, even madder than before. I could see that as the bear stood up in the pile, or in the pit, its head was above the line of the ground. I bent down and put the beanie on its head. What I couldn't see was the bear's arm swat me from the side and knocked me forward into the pit. I thwacked onto the ground in front of the bear. This was not part of my mega evil plan. The beanie was in place, but I hadn't flipped the switch to turn it on, and until it was turned on, it wasn't a trap, just a bit of bear fashion that wasn't making him any happier. I heard lots of footsteps above. "Fang, quick, bite the switch on the bear hat," Geeky Girl shouted. I heard another "Row!" from Fang as she landed on the bear's head and bit at the hat. The bear was waving its paws in the air, trying to claw Fang off his head. Then I spotted the budgie dive-bombing him from above. Here's a picture of that. It looked like a scene in those old movies where King Kong is being attacked by tiny planes. Well, if King Kong was a grumpy bear and the planes were a little green budgie. Boris was distracting him, but it wouldn't last long. I had to get up there and help Fang. The bear let out a roar and leaned its head back. Fang nearly fell off, but dug into the bear's thick fur with her paws and held on. Then the bear flung its head forward, and the motion pulled the goggles down over his eyes. Perfect luck. It couldn't see now that its eyes were covered, but the goggles still weren't switched on. "The button," Geeky Girl shouted just as the bear's paw caught Fang on the side and sent her flying off his head. She tumbled into a pile of leaves that lay there on the ground. Not moving, she was on the ground. "Fang," I shouted. Then the bear turned towards my voice and started sniffing in my direction. It couldn't see, but it could still smell me. Right then, though, I didn't care. I was not going to be bear food today, and I was not going to let my kitten be a bear snack. I wasn't thinking. I clearly wasn't thinking. I mean, what person who has any kind of thought in their mind jumps on a bear's back? But that's what I did. The bear reared up again, but I hung on. The bear scrambled out of the pit in a rage, throwing me right and left, but I hung on. I just had to hit that button. I reached up and whacked the top of those goggles on the bear's head, aiming for the big red button, of course. There's a picture of that. Mark, Geeky Girl shouted. Then everything went kind of quiet. I remember falling off the bear. I remember Geeky Girl shouting. I remember Sanj wheezing and hiding behind a bush. I remember being on the ground and seeing a big hairy bear butt heading for me and me rolling out of the way. I think that's when I started thinking. I rolled out from under the bear just as his tail hit the grassy floor next to the pit. It stopped swatting, whimpered slightly, and covered its ears with its paws, and it just stayed there. I got up and ran over to Fang, who was still lying in a pile of leaves. Fang? All right. So that's chapter 27. Now we're going to read chapter 28 right quick. Boris flapped down and started fanning Fang with her wings. I could see a flutter of her eyelids and a twitch of her paw, and then pounce. She was up and just caught at the edge of a budgie feather as Boris retreated back to Geeky Girl's shoulder. Ah, that's my evil little kitten, I said, stroking her from behind the ears. Sand strode out from behind the bush. Well, that's all very touching, but you wouldn't have needed to do any of that if you hadn't messed up our animal trap in the beginning. Dustin looked at his watch. It's nearly time to show our traps. Maybe we can quickly fix the ray gun and round up some of the smaller animals to do a demonstration. Give us the nicifying, helpful minion ray, Geeky Girl, Sanj demanded. I'll recalibrate it, and if you're lucky, we won't use it on you. Oh, Geeky Girl smiled. You can pick it up yourself. I dropped it just over there when the bear got out of the pit and was staggering around. She pointed over to where the bear was sitting. You could just about see the nozzle of the ray gun sticking out from under his bottom fur. It might have a few scratches, but you could just ask him to move. She folded her arms triumphantly and smiled at Sanj. Arr! He shouted. Dustin walked over towards the bear. Right, so if you guys have ruined our trap, then we'll ruin yours. He was going to take the goggles off the bear. Besides, I reckon I can run fast enough. You can't run faster than a bear, Sanj said. No, I just have to run faster than you. Suddenly Boris swooped down and grabbed the whistle from around Dustin's neck. Hey, he shouted as the whistle chain slid over his head and into the air. Boris dropped it right into Geeky Girl's hands. Now, what do you think the animals will do when they hear this and they're not under your control, She blew the whistle as hard as she could. Dozens of animals all headed for the noise. They did not seem happy. A raccoon started for me. He looked a lot scarier than Fang with charcoal on her face. Bigger claws, sharper teeth, more attitude. Maybe blowing that whistle wasn't such a great idea, I said to Geeky Girl. Then I saw Fang hit the raccoon from the side. It was the best kitten-on raccoon football tackle in history. It was probably the only one, too. But that raccoon was not prepared to come back for more. He ran off into the trees. The other animals were all running around, though, looking confused. Some of the squirrels had decided that Dustin's hair looked pretty good to hide things in, and had jumped on his head and started scrabbling for nuts. Ah, get them off me, my hair, he shouted. But no one was really listening. Here's the squirrels in Dustin's hair. Sanj was too busy swatting at more squirrels and skunks. Now I know that Sanj is an evil genius and all. He never really let us forget it. But nowhere in that giant evil computer genius brain did anything ever tell him maybe it's not a good idea to make a skunk angry. And I would say flailing at one and shouting, "Go away, you ignorant, stripy little beast," might make it angry. The skunk lifted its tail and turned. That was all it took. In a couple of minutes, we had gone from near death by bear to watching a very smelly Sanj and a squirrel-infested Dustin running back to camp screaming like, well, I was going to say like girls, but I think Geeky Girl would have hit me. And Dustin couldn't tell on her out here for unauthorized violence at camp, so I didn't. So that's chapter 28. So they've survived the bear, and they've got all those animals riled up, and let's see how this ends next time. Appreciate you all, and hope you have a good day.